Creating a successful business has never been so simple. Welcome to the Journey of Entrepreneurship podcast. Your hosts, Richard Phipps and Rosler Oriol, will provide valuable insights that will help you turn your ideas into reality.
Good evening and welcome back to another episode of the Journey of Entrepreneurship podcast. My name is Rosler and I'm here with my co-host Richard Phipps. How are you doing today, Mr. Phipps?
Great, my friend.
Glad to hear that.
It was a good day when we were sharing some moments.
Absolutely.
Today we were going to share some information, I believe, on customer service, which is a very key part of any business. And would you like me to go ahead with that process, or do you have some thoughts you'd like to share? How do you want to proceed today, my friend?
I'll definitely follow your lead on this one.
Okay. Well, for our listeners, most people think of customers as the people that come to the door that they do business with, or that they reach online to buy products or services. And ideally, that's a form of thought, because right now, today we think of both internal and external customers. The internal customers are the people that work with us and that provide service to the external customers. So basically, when we start thinking of customers, you have to think of customers in two ways. Those that provide service going out and those provide revenue coming in. Without either one, the equation goes off track. So one of the things that we talk about in terms of customer service is helping the owner, business owner, because the onus is on the business owner, or the responsibility, if you will, is on the business owner's shoulder to determine what type of customers, what type of culture he wants to develop for his business, and what type of market segment they're going to serve. Obviously, we've talked about this before, a business cannot serve everybody. You have baby boomers, you have millennials, you have Generation X, and I'd be pressed to define all of those for you, but the bottom line is each of those groups have different needs. And if a person is putting out products or services, it is going to be very difficult to be able to cover the needs across the spectrum of those three groups of people. So ideally, a business would look for a specific group to target in terms of a target market. And then once you identify what the target market is, sometimes we talk about marketing, but once you identify what the target market is, then we have to decide how to attract those customers from the target market. However, the plan for attraction must take into consideration the team that you have on the other side, the customers you have internally, the people you've hired to be able to create the environment or the culture to service the market that you intend to service. And as a business owner, the business owner has to determine what type of culture they're going to develop. And when I say culture, it could be family. You have some restaurants that say, okay, you're part of the family, so everybody treats you like family. So it's a kind of family atmosphere. People get comfortable. And then another culture could be one that's very formal, where people have much higher expectations. You walk in there, you walk into a restaurant, you're supposed to be a greeter and a host, and in addition to the host, somebody that stands over you and make sure that towels are in the right place to across your lap, and in case there's food and spilling and things of that nature, and they'll lay this all for you. So it's a very different experience where you walk in and somebody is sort of waiting on your hand and foot. A peculiar expression, but it means for everything you do while you are in that restaurant. So you have two different cultures when you speak of it that way. Ideally, the folks that serve in each of those environments will have a very different set of instructions. there's another another restaurant now, and I thought of restaurants when we were talking about this, because restaurants are places of service, and you have this customers and certain and some people can be very rude and indifferent on the revenue generation and the revenue production end. Being the folks that spend the money, the revenue production. So the folks that are producing the revenue by coming to do business with the store sometimes can be very indifferent about the people that serve them. On the other hand, you have people on the team or inside, the internal customer service folks can be very, difficult to deal with if they're not hired appropriately. So you have another restaurant where people are deliberately rude. Then it's part of the culture. And I'm trying to think. I don't want to name the restaurant, and I know there's more than one of them, where you go in and people, and it's a surprise for people that, are used to a certain level of service or pretty rigid in their way of thinking, and you take them into this restaurant and somebody tosses the food, slides the food over in front of them, and then they'll put their fingers on the plate and take food off the plate, but it's like you have fries and they'll take a fry off your plate, and, that's just part of the culture. And for somebody that some people will take guests in there for shock treatment. 4 or 5 friends will take somebody that doesn't know about the restaurant into the restaurant and sort of have them all shocked with the treatment that they receive. But that's the culture of that restaurant, and it creates a very funny atmosphere when things happen. So that's in terms of the type of culture. And we just spoke of 3 different cultures in the same type of industry. The same thing can happen. You have to develop a culture in your business model and the service end, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a electronic outlet facility or whether it's a hospitality, another type of hospitality, hotels or, hotels have certain environments. They have fragrances that now attract you as you walk in. You have guest service representatives that are there to, make sure that your every moment is a wonderful experience. But then you have other hotels where you go and you walk up, you check in, and you check in on your own. They give you a key, you find your own room. So all of these are different levels of service and different cultural experiences as far as business culture.
One thing that you mentioned earlier that has to go with this overall idea of all 3 phases and all 3 areas is creating an identity, which is definitely something that you mentioned. And I think that's really the starting point. Once you create the identity of what kind of culture you create, you can kind of move on from there with your team and with your customers as well.
Adding to what you just said, it is very essential that a person thinks of what direction they want to take, because if you create the right brand, people will talk regularly about the type of experience they're having, and if it's one where people are very rude and so forth, it carries, but then the expectation is it becomes a part of the expectation when you go there, that you just want to see how rude they can be. And it's a sort of a funny interchange of a funny interaction, as I said earlier, that makes things very humorous. But all of that speaks to culture in the business environment. Now, the other piece is, now that we've identified what culture is and sort of, how to develop that type of culture. Basically, as an entrepreneur, you have a vision of what you want and what you want to accomplish and what you want your business to look like and what you want your revenues to be like, and you're going in. So, that's what you build out. And in building that out or developing that, we say build up, but then developing that, you identify, you can't just hire anyone. You have to hire someone to work in your business that's going to be amenable or that fits into your development. Because some people will not be able to work in the restaurant where we mentioned earlier, where people are expected to be rude because it's not in their nature and they can't, they would have a very difficult time. There's some other people that are witty and, friendly, but can be very, I want to say, sort of rude on command. That's an awkward way to put it, but, they have the personalities that can deal with that without faltering. So you have to then identify the right people to hire to develop the culture that you want. Everybody will not fit into that culture. Now, that's on the inside. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about the inside is developing an environment where you want your customers, your internal customers, your associates, to be happy about what they're doing, excited about what they're doing, to be passionate about what they're doing, and to enjoy to the extent that they would do it without pay. Now, we know they're doing it for pay, but we want to get those individuals so tied into the process, so engaged in the process, almost like ownership of and that's another way that you might, consider giving long-term employees a portion of the interest in the business, and that way they buy into the culture and the vision, and they help without concern because now they're owners rather than just employees. So we have to take all those things into consideration in terms of making sure that we hire the right people in order to create the right culture, in order to get the right results that we expect. Now, and the right results would be to be able to attract the people on the other side, the market that we're serving, to come in, be excited about being there, receiving service, and exchanging their cash for a product or service, and having a pleasant experience in doing so. And then how do we create that pleasant experience? It all comes from the service that we develop on the other side, the program we develop on the other side. And it's really a program. It's like any other thing. It's any other business, a system that has certain protocols, and after those protocols are executed, then you expect certain results, and the results would be money in the cash register or whatever system is used to collect the cash that's being spent by the customers or market that they're trying to reach. So it's a fairly simple process. However, it requires great time and thought as to what kind of culture you're going to develop to reach the market. In some areas, we have music as part of the culture of your business. And there are some malls that you go into where you can experience 3 or 4 different types of music based on the culture and the target audience that the vendor in the mall has. One mall that I recently traversed, I think it's the Prudential. It's connected to Prudential, but I don't remember the name of it now. But it's a pretty large mall, and you have, on the one end, you have hip hop, and you have the vendors that sell to the hip hop crowd, or the stores that sell. On another end, you have classical music, and you have the Macy's and the Crystal and all that type of thing in that section of the mall. And then you have country, and then there's a couple of stores that sell country wear, country and western wear, your boots and so forth. And the music in each section reflects the customers that they're looking to serve. And then, when you're able to set it up like that, people begin to get a better understanding when you're talking about customer relations, customer service, how to develop those programs for those specific reasons. I talk a little bit about customer relations separately as opposed to customer service. Customer relations comes when you're dealing with specific guests on specific issues, or specific patrons, instead of specific guests, because guest sounds like a hotel, but specific patrons, and patrons are people who support your business. And you almost need, in every situation as a business owner, somebody to deal with customer service issues that ultimately, can be resolved without the business owner getting involved. However, sometimes the matter has to be escalated, and the business owner has to be willing to deal with that process. Now, the ideal situation in customer relations is to have each customer complaint issue resolved amicably, and with the customer agreeing that they will continue to do business with the institution that we're referring to in this particular case, whichever institution that is. So if the customer relations department functions well, then your customers are generally happy and will generally agree to return to your business or do business. Now, that's providing you're able to resolve the issue satisfactorily. Some issues may not be able to be resolved satisfactorily. So you have to find a way to be able to work through the customer's issues, and provide incentives for them to come back if the issue cannot be resolved in a very mutually amicable way. Then you have to go above that in order to retain the customer. So there are several systems that can be put in place to do this. It's all dependent on the business owner, what type of business they're going to operate, where they're going to operate that business, and that has a lot to do with the type of culture you develop, because it has to complement what you do. Is there anything you think I missed in terms of there's a great lot more detail, but of course, you were able to provide that detail for clients as they develop their particular programs on a consultant basis, but being able to give them a general overview is the intent, I believe, of today's program.
There's definitely a lot of moving pieces that would take us quite a few episodes to cover. So, like you said, this is an overview. Something I would say is, you mentioned when there is issues, knowing how to solve them and being able to keep your customers happy. But even when there aren't issues, you should always be thinking of customer retention, but creating relationships with your customers and continually reaching out to them and doing things to keep them happy, to keep them coming back. So you will always have issues, and there will be things that go wrong, and you have to know how to solve those. But even more importantly, you have to be consistent in keeping contact with your customers and keeping them happy.
I was in a meeting recently, and one of the speakers on the panel with me said in his presentation that this specific group just wants to be respected and appreciated. Now, ironically, that statement goes for all of the customers I would say, pretty much all of the customers that do business with any company. They want to be appreciated for the dollars that they're spending with you, and they want to be respected as viable members of the community in which they do business. So if we, as business owners, develop systems that will demonstrate appreciation and respect for the customers, it is likely that they'll be able to retain those customers. And things that we talk about frequently are like just birthday recognitions or special event recognitions, special day recognitions, anniversaries, being able to get newsletters out to the folks with things that you're doing, and not just general newsletters, because people think that just sending a newsletter out that's prepared by some entity and fast forward, it's a busy world, and you can subscribe to people doing newsletters. However, that newsletter has to have something of interest, some incentive, not only information for the customer to open it up and then feel inclined to continue doing business. So you have to be conscious about what you put in newsletters as well, so that it provides incentives for your customers to continue being with you, whether they're coupons or stories or life stories about themselves or other customers that might make it interesting. Those are things that one might want to consider. But that's all in the customer service model discussion, and we can continue the discussion. As you say, we would have to plan several sessions to address this. So I'm sure that if we gave all the information out, it would be very difficult to apply without some additional instructions. So it gives individuals reason to call you, Mr. Oriole, and we look forward when they call to having that discussion with them.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for your time, Mr. Phipps. It was definitely a pleasure, and if anyone does have any questions, they can email me directly at Rosler, R-O-S-L-E-R, @thinkingoutloudinc.com, and we'd be more than happy to answer them on air.
I like the email Thinking Out Loud, because think tanks help us to develop great ideas, great opportunities, and great practical programming for the business owners that we work with.
Absolutely. And that concludes our episode, and I look forward to our next episode.
We'll talk then. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on the Journey of Entrepreneurship podcast. To stay in contact with your hosts and to access more content and resources, go to journeyofentrepreneurship.com. Together, we will make this journey the best ever.